Alright, so, this is going to be another top 10 list. Yeah, I know, I've been doing a lot of top 10 lists recently, but they're actually kind of fun. They're actually kind of fun, and in honor of Man of Steel, I was kind of just, after watching some of the new TV spots, I was like, you know, I really want to do another top 10 villain list, and I decided Superman, top 10 favorite Superman list. Villains list, I mean. And I really thought about this, but the problem is, you know, and I'll fully acknowledge this even though I'm a Superman fan, Superman doesn't have a lot of rogues that, you know, are memorable. You know, you could literally say 10 or 12, and that's it. Now, yeah, I know, also, the top two are probably the most predictable, but I'm gonna let you guys keep guessing of who's gonna be number 2 and who's gonna be number 1. And I'm gonna explain why I like them, they're so high on the list. But on the other hand, also, one more thing before I forget. Darkseid is not on this list. Now, you're probably wondering, why the hell Darkseid is not on this list? He's kind of a Superman villain. I kind of consider him more of a DC Universe villain. I've never really considered him just a Superman villain. I've considered him more like he's been a threat to the whole frickin' DC Universe. So, when I finally get around to doing my top 10 favorite DC Universe villains, Darkseid will be on that list, and probably very high on that list as well. Not saying he'll be number 1, but he'll definitely be very high on that list. But yeah, like I said, a lot of the villains you're going to see on this list are going to be kind of predictable, because again, Superman doesn't have a lot of memorable rogues. That's kind of sad, but still. I think a lot of people are going to, you know, probably see the villain, are going to be surprised of where I put these villains. And again, like with all my lists before, these lists are just my opinion. These are just my personal opinion. If you have a villain on here that you think should be higher or lower, or not be on this list or should be on this list, that's totally fine. That's your opinion. This is just mine. All of my top 10 lists are just stuff of my personal preference. I've never said that this is, you know, this is fact. This is what you should like because I like it. No, I've never been like that. Whatever floats your boat. That's what I've always said about my list, is that this is just my personal list, and these are just how I like these characters and the numbers that I like them. So, just keep that in mind. But anyway, guys, I bet you're all excited to see who's going to be in the first half of this top 10 video. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. Number 10. Manchester Black. Now, Manchester Black is a very interesting villain on the grounds that now, the reason why he's on this list is on the grounds of, you know, he was a very short-time villain, and when he first appeared, he wasn't even kind of like a villain. He was more of an anti-hero. And the reason why he's on this list, you know, he has the slot of number 10 of what he did. He basically, in his first appearance with the Elite, took down Superman. They pretty much picked apart Superman's morals and threw it back in his face in the most interesting way. So, in that regard, that was interesting. But then, what really gets him a spot on this list is what he did to Superman. Is pretty much, he mentally put out that Clark Kent was Superman, told everyone that, you know, here's Lois Lane, here's Ma and Pa Kent, just attack everybody. And every single one of Superman's villains came out, and it just had Superman go around the world completely exhausted, and by the end of it, convinced Superman he had killed Lois Lane. He convinced Superman that he killed Lois Lane, and tried to get Superman to kill himself, only to have Superman go, no, you know, despite everything, I won't kill you. And at the end of it all, he took away all the memories, every villain's memory of him you know, Superman as Clark Kent, even Lex Luthor, before killing himself like a G. So, yeah, for those two appearances, not because of Superman vs. the Elite animated film, but what he does in Superman ending battles, and what he did in What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way, and the few other appearances that he had. He is so cool. I loved his personality of I don't give a fuck attitude, and he just was everything Superman was not, and so were his morals, excuse me. But anyway, that's just why he's at my number 10 spot. So, yeah. Anyway, moving on. Number 9. The Parasite. Now, the Parasite is not really like a villain, like I get really into his character. It's more like, okay, this is going to sound really childish, but this mostly stems from the Superman animated series because I thought he was such a cool villain. But also on the grounds of the Parasite, whenever he showed up in comics or the animated show, I'd be like, oh shit, it's the Parasite, awesome! That is literally my mindset whenever the Parasite shows up, and also the villain, the next villain coming up. But the Parasite has always been cool to me on the grounds of just a guy who, you know, he had a shit life, and he had a shit life, and he had the most shit thing happen to him, becoming this horrible abomination that needs to feed on energy. And it was so cool to see, he's kind of tragic, but he's not kind of like in this tragic in the sense of like Mr. Freeze. He's more I mean, yeah, in Superman Earth 1, that's a different story, but I'm talking about main DC Universe Parasite, where this Parasite was very, he took, all of his rage out, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm a freak. Okay, I'm gonna go beat the shit out of people now. So that was kind of his mindset. It was always cool to see him like that. It was always that he was kind of like this normal thug who got superpowers, and he's like, sweet, I'm gonna go fight Superman now. Fuck you guys. But yeah, that's mostly, it's more like, it's just an excitement thing for the Parasite. That's really the reason why I like him. I know it's really minute, but it's always fun to see how Superman can combat a guy who can absorb his abilities and take it to him firsthand. So that's just a little bit of why I like the Parasite. But moving on, number 8, Metallo. Now, Metallo, in the same reason for Parasite, is that I'm not like I know he's not a very interesting character on his own. That's the problem with a lot of Superman's villains, that they don't do a lot of stuff like they did with Batman's villains, unless you're fucking Lex Luthor or Brainiac, which, yeah, they'll be on this list. You guys probably figured that out by now. It's not like they'll do some really groundbreaking character stuff. It'll be more like, oh yeah, it's Metallo, and I get excited when I see Superman fight Metallo. And it's kind of funny, too. It's like, I just on the grounds of, I'm Superman, I'm here to stop you. I'm Metallo, kryptonite, bitch! And it's kind of like that. It's just fun to see Superman and Metallo fight, because it's more or less fun to watch Superman use his brain over his brawn to fight a guy who has his weakness as his power source. So that kind of just royally fucks him up. And I think that's a really cool way. And I've always loved what they've done with Metallo. It's kind of like in the sense with Parasite, where Metallo's like, oh shit, I got turned into a human, I got turned into a robot, that sucks. I'm gonna go beat the shit out of Superman now. That's another reason. It's just kind of, he's always been, and also this comes from the animated series. My love for the animated series as well is that's also where it stems from as well. And also whenever Metallo shows up in the comic, I'm like, oh yeah, Metallo, awesome. So, yeah, there's that. Number 7. Doomsday. Okay, let me explain why Doomsday's kind of like at the number 7 spot he's on. It's on the grounds of, I feel like he's been overused a bit much in the DC universe. What I mean is, Doomsday, whenever, like, before the 52, Doomsday would just pop out of nowhere after his first appearance after killing Superman. He's always going to be, like, the guy the monster who killed Superman. And, yeah, in a sense, Superman, Doomsday, Hunter-Killer, where when Doomsday went to Apocalypse, that was also a pretty cool story, too. But since then, it's always been, like, Doomsday's been every villain's ace in the hole to fight Superman. That's always been kind of the thing. Like, Doomsday became more or less just a Superman enemy. It just became another Superman enemy after he appeared in Death of Superman. And I was kind of like, oh, nope, uh-oh, Superman's coming, better get Doomsday out. That was literally it. Doomsday was every villain's ace in the hole. Like, it even feels like Doomsday would just show up randomly. I mean, hell, even the government had a kryptonite-made Doomsday. And I was like, okay, yeah, Doomsday's just kind of fucking everywhere these days. So, that, in turn, kind of lessens him, in my opinion, is that Doomsday just got so overused in the DC universe. I mean, granted, it was so fucking cool to see Doomsday show up, but there were other times where Doomsday would just feel like so depowered, and his presence just kind of like, oh, okay, Doomsday, that's fine. It's not like, it wasn't like in his first few appearances, like, oh shit, it's Doomsday. But however, having said all that, guys, I still think Doomsday is a very cool character. I mean, yeah, like I said, this is the guy who beat Superman to death. And his first few appearances where he just, he was getting smarter, he was becoming more powerful, and he took on Darkseid, he beat the shit out of Darkseid, he had this epic fight with Superman on Apocalypse. It was really cool. Like, Doomsday is still cool, and I do get a little excited when I see him show up in any DC comic, but still, there are other times when writers, back then when writers were just like, oh, here comes Doomsday. It's not like a lot of people built up Doomsday. That was kind of the problem. So, that's kind of why he's on this spot, is that he kind of got overused, and he lost a lot of his, he lost a lot of his, his threatening persona. But still, having said all that, I still respect what the character was. And it is cool, like, when writers write him right, he can still be menacing. So, yeah, there's that on why, Doomsday... But that's just, again, guys, this is just my personal opinion of why I put Doomsday here. So, anyway. Number 6. General Zod. Now, Zod is... you're probably explaining, yeah, he's not on the top 5 list, and... Zod, it's not on the same reason of Doomsday that he got overexposed in comics. It's more like whenever you think Zod, you think of, movie Zod. And comic book Zod hasn't really seen a lot of him. We didn't really see a lot of comic book Zod until, like, Jeff Johns started pimping him out in a lot of his stories. So, Zod was also pretty cool in New Krypton, and he is pretty cool. I mean, this is a guy who destroyed the entire who pretty much spits in the face of all of Krypton's morals, and has this very brutal and militaristic view on the universe. And it's so cool to see, someone who has all the powers of Superman and has none of his ideals. That is such a cool concept, and when written right, General Zod can be one of the most interesting villains to read about. But having said all that, I do prefer... This also comes from... Yeah, he's been shown a lot in the movies, but don't get me wrong, I am kind of excited to see him and Superman throw down in Man of Steel, don't get me wrong. But however, it just kind of lessens points for me that a lot of people just think of the movie Zod over the comic book Zod, and that's the one that DC and Warner Bros. Just kind of pimp out. But comic book Zod, when he's written right, like in New Krypton, or Superman Last Son... and so many other stories, he can be the most brutal character. I mean, imagine, what's a good character I could use, and not from DC Universe? Imagine if a Klingon had Superman's powers. That's Zod, right there. And it's amazing that this guy is tactical, he's dangerous, and this guy has moves that even Superman doesn't even realize this guy has military training, and he's probably even more intelligent than Superman. That's another scary part. So it's always a battle of not just, brains and brawn against Superman, but also like a battle of ideals between them. So it's always cool to see them clash. But anyway, guys, that's just part 1 of my list. I hope you guys have been enjoying it. And again, this is just my personal opinion on my list. So stay tuned for the top 5.